So all month we're talking about how to make love real, and that that heart beats fast, that romantic love is wonderful, and I trust that we all get to experience that throughout our lives. And we're talking about a love that goes way beyond that, right? And to make love real in new ways. That's what this month is about. And as Lainey and Kirby just so beautifully sang, is to this song, to live in love. And to live all my life in love as much as possible each and every day. So today we're talking about seeing love. Last week, Dr. Peter talked about being love. And today is all about seeing love. How do we look through the lens of love every day of our life? What perspective do we come from? Do we see love? Do we come from that lens of this boundless love, this power of love, as much as possible? And Ernest Holmes, founder of Science of Mind, describes love like this, and I so love how he describes it. It's this greatest healing and drawing power on earth, I would say, throughout the entire universe, throughout everything, right? It's this cosmic force whose sweep is irresistible. So as this boundless love sweeps through and in and as each of us, it's irresistible. It changes everything. And it's indescribable, and nothing and no one can stand against it, not even inside ourselves, when this irresistible sweep is present and alive. He says, love is the greatest power there is, and it is this power, this presence that we have come here to be, right? And it's the very reason for our being. It's the very reason for our life. So how do we view life? How do we see life? How do we see each other? In the seemingly separateness of life, and yet that's an illusion, and our eyes plays tricks on us, and we think, oh, that's a chair, and that's a chair, and that's a chair, and it's separate. When actually, it's actually one thing. That's a person, that's a person, that's a person. Our eyes can play trick on us, yes? And it's actually one thing. That's one of the basic premises of our faith, our philosophy, way of life. And how do we do this? And as we move through our life, how do we do this consciously? So that's one place we can come from. I consciously choose to view life this way. And how do we do this unconsciously? Like not even aware. That's what means unconscious, right? Not even aware that this is going on. And it happens. And one of the ways in which this happens is, and it can impact all of us, is the things that we can clearly see. And one of those things is the color of our skin. We can clearly see it. It's something that we notice right off the bat, right? We don't need a flashing neon light going on. We see it. And how do we see each other? So I want to talk about this today. I want to explore this. I want to share some stories about this and to see and to invite each of us to dig and to look and to feel as much as possible in every moment. Is there something unconscious running me, reacting me, expressing as me in my life? Perhaps I didn't even know. So that we can bring it to the surface, look at it, and do something about it consciously. So I'm going to share some examples and share some conscious ways in which we can each take actions to make a difference. And it'll make a huge difference in the healing in humanity. Ernest Holmes tells us that healing is unseeing that which is wrong and seeing that which is right. And let's face it, there's just some stuff that humanity has gotten wrong and is getting wrong still. Yes? And the way that we're seeing it. And it's impacting every single one of us. No one is left out. So soon after I arrived in Dallas 8 years ago to come do ministry here at CSLDallas, I don't think it was maybe a month or two after I arrived, there was yet another incident of a black man being murdered by a police officer. And I really hold as peace officers. And again, this is unconscious bias that's running amok. And we opened our sanctuary to hold a space where we could talk about this, where we could pray about this, because it was local. It was close by. And we could do this. And again, I was really new here. And I sat in a circle right here up front with people in this community. And there's a woman in our community that has 3 black sons. And she was expressing what this was about for her and what it was triggering. And a very lovely and heartfelt and truly well-meaning white woman turned to all of us and said, "But I don't see color." And I could feel it in the room, and I especially felt it in me. And I went, "Oh, here we go." And my heart started beating really fast. And inside of me was like, "Karen, don't wait, because don't wait for a person of color to have to speak up. Do it now." And I was like, "But Karen, you're new. What are they going to think?" And the heart got in my throat, and I was very nervous because I knew that when someone says, "I don't see color," that's basically truly indicating, "I don't see you. I don't see you." And so I wanted to share that from a perspective of the same color skin. And like, well, actually, I appreciate what you're saying, but what I would like to share with you is I had to learn this with some of my fellow ministerial students. And when I say I don't see color, I'm basically saying I don't see who you are. I don't see you. I don't acknowledge you and all of the gifts and all of the strengths and all of the great things that you bring. And she was taken aback. Well, I didn't mean any harm. I said, I understand that. I'm sharing. I'm wanting to help educate, right? And I said, it's sort of like when we each have different thinking styles. People are very analytical and all of that, and I'm not. I'm an expressive, you know. We have different things. I'm very kinesthetic. Maybe y'all aren't. And we have different styles and ways in which we show up, right? We have different sexual orientations. We have different ways in which we're creative and all of that. And so basically that's like saying, I don't see any of that. I don't acknowledge any of that, right? And here's the thing. At the exact same time, on the other side of the same coin, there is a paradox. We absolutely do need to see color. And so, you know, to see it, it's really interesting. If we take anything else that we get to experience in our life, especially in nature, we don't say to the cardinal, "I don't see you, red bird." We don't say to the blue jay, not. We don't say to the blackbird, you know. We don't say to, oh, my favorite one, the painted bunting. That's just so multicolored. Look it up if you don't know what a painted bunting is. We don't do that. We acknowledge and we celebrate. And so we can acknowledge and celebrate the color of all skin types, right? But here's the rub. And not unconsciously or consciously allow it to influence how we hold someone else based upon a thought of otherness, not equal, fear, trepidation, and all that stuff. because we still have a lot of work to do. And that includes each of us right here in the community of CSLDallas, radically inclusive, spiritually progressive, transforming lives. One of the key ways I can share that we have a lot of work to do is I still remember standing right here in June of 2015 after the murders that took place at the AME church. When I stood here and said with great passion, Black Lives Matter, and I said it a few times, I literally saw 4 white people get up and walk out of the sanctuary. No one else saw that because they were sitting in the back, but I did. And I was like, I just, wow, that like just happened here? In 2018, in the fall, we had the beautiful occasion of hosting all of our ministers from Centers for Spiritual Living here on our campus. And knowing that all of our colleagues and practitioners and lay members would be coming to Dallas to this beautiful, actually, sorry, it was ministers. It was a ministers gathering. So we had the ministers gathering. So all of the ministers were invited here to our campus. And really wanted us to do something as a community in the city of Dallas with that powerful consciousness coming here. And so we planned an event down at City Hall on the plaza, and it was healing the consciousness of racism. And Peter and I and 2 other ministers spoke to this. And I want to bring forward, I invite you to find that. It's called Healing the Consciousness of Racism. Again, it was October 2018. You can find it on our YouTube channel. And I want to pull a little excerpt from what Petra said in her part. I'll never forget the first time she wrote it, and then she said, I want you to hear this and tell me what you think. I was just like, oh my gosh, it just ripped through me. I said, yes, yes, don't change a word. So I can't do the whole thing because it's a little longer, and I'm going to bring some things out. I'm paraphrasing here at the beginning. She's talking about our American Revolution and our founding documents, right? It was a revolution at the time of awakening humanity to the possibilities and potential for each individual life in the context, you can tell this is her talking, in the context of civil society by creating a nation based on the premise that all men are created equal and endowed with the inalienable right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And she talks about how this document is like this compass, sort of like radically inclusive, spiritually progressive, transforming life. It's a compass for us. It's our guiding purpose, right? So this is a compass to lead us to great and greater human rights. Now, she says, again, I'm pulling excerpts out, we know that at the time, that only meant male property owners and, let's face it, white male property owners for the enslaved. Actually, black men were counted as 3/5 of a person, and no woman was counted at all, right? And so we continue to expand our understanding of the prophecy that all men are created equal, and to find a moral and a spiritual fiber in the cloth to claim it for everyone. She says, every person made in the image of likeness of the divine creator, imbued with inalienable rights, is in fact included in all men, right? That was the language back then. Man meant humanity. She says, except they aren't. Not in practice. Not in the persistent ways that our culture holds on to the beliefs about groups of people, especially black people, especially black men. We must continue to broaden the revolution to the blacks and African Americans in our nation and see through the lens of inclusion, respect, and the dignity of every life. And so she said, yet, the last few years, and this was 2018, and I can say the last few years have shown us that the revolution is not over, is it? Thank you. I love this perspective. It's not an all-inclusive, it's one perspective, but it's a powerful perspective. How about we take this in and sit in this perspective? What creates this pernicious undercurrent of racism, even fear of black people, especially of black men? It is because there is still underlying beliefs held in the psyche of America that causes us to fear a powerful black man and despise a strong black woman. The grandeur of America is its open arms and our outrageous belief in the possibility and potential of every single human being. When some cannot come to the banquet and others are murdered at the feast, there is a cancer eating away at the heart of America, tainting its very soul. This cancer is the unconsciously held beliefs that blacks, which are at odds with our spoken values of our rights and dignity of humanity. So there is an underbelly in the consciousness of America, just as we subconsciously cling to beliefs that are wrong, outdated, and dangerous. So part of the American psyche is holding on to old fears generated lifetimes ago in the ships and markets and working fields of the enslaved. Again, this is an excerpt. Can we imagine warriors ripped from their tribes and matriarchs torn from their families, arriving in the Americas, half-starved, but with an insatiable anger? I'd be angry too. And a burning desire for freedom? Can we imagine slave owners with a shattered moral and spiritual compass becoming fearful of these powerful warriors and strong women? Fear creates anger and the need to suppress, which only invites more resistance. Thus, violence begets violence until death or defeat is the end result. Yet the story shared, these men are angry and strong. The stories we got are be afraid. Be afraid. Don't let them lift their heads for a second. And these women won't listen. They are too full of themselves to do what they're told. Break them down. Don't let them lift their head for a second. And more death and defeat is the result. So over time, individual stories pass into generic stories, right? This is happening on so many levels. These become legends, and legends become myths, and myths fade from the conscious mind. But this lingering odor of the stories merge into the fabric of the psyche as underlying beliefs, assumptions, and perspective about life that are at odds with the value of awakening humanity and the moral compass provided by this ongoing revolution we are engaged in. And that we are still engaged in. And so she says this consciousness is crying out for healing. This is the consciousness that perpetuates racism, the murdering of black men and women without justice or change. And it's so against the values of America and the moral compass of spirituality that is crying out to be healed. I don't know about you, if your skin color is white, but have you ever heard be afraid? Fear that black man. He's out to harm you, rob you, rape you, kill you. It's in our collective consciousness. I want to share that when I lived in Oakland, California, pretty spiritual person, Oakland Center for Spiritual Living, all that. I just thought, I got this all handled. I didn't have this growing up with my parents, even though I grew up in Tennessee, the South, and I had it all together. And I actually went to a peace rally event. Native Americans, African Americans, Asians, you name it, all around. We just had this incredible, powerfully grounded event. It was awesome. And I will not forget this. And after that event, I was so filled up in peace and grounded, and it was so good. And I drove home. And it just so happened on my way home, I took a little street through a neighborhood to get to the main roads. And when I drove, it was only 2 blocks, y'all. When I drove on these 2 blocks, there were 4 black men in various places on the sidewalk, just minding their own business. Inside of me, I got scared. And I was like, I need to put pedal to the metal and get through this 2 blocks and get back on that safe street. And I witnessed it inside of me. And I pulled over and I wept. I was taken aback. I was like, I did not plant this in me. This is not who I am. My parents didn't plant this in me. My grandparents and a lot of other folks did. But it was like, no, this did not get planted in me. And I just wept. I was horrified. I was like, no, this cannot be me. And so it was like at that time I said, I am living out of congruence with the way the reality of life works and how everything works, and I must uproot this from me. I was horrified. And it was not easy to be inside of me for a while. And I said, then I'm going to do whatever it takes to get this cancer that has been placed as collective consciousness out of me. It's not going to remain in me. And it took me a while, but I did my spiritual work. And I didn't think much of it after that. I was just like, done with this. And then I was driving home from a class on a particular night, and when I lived in Oakland, I ended up living up in the hills of Oakland, California, and the center was down in the valley. And so I would take the little highway and I would go up this big hill to get to my place that I lived. On this particular evening, and I've done this lots of times, right? On this particular evening, it was really dark. It was like 10:30 at night. And I got off the highway and I drove up the road. And I noticed that there was someone walking on the side of the street. And I just, off the street, but in the grass. You know what I mean. And I just, drove right on by. And then all of a sudden inside of me, the voice said, stop, back up. And I've come to listen to that voice, whether it screams or whispers. And it was a whisper. It was stop, back up. And I obeyed. I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And I backed up. And I got to whoever this person was and rolled down my window and immediately looked, and it was a black man. I said, hey. I said, do you need a ride up the hill? He looked at me, and he said, he was taken aback. He was like, well, sure. I said, well, come on, get in. He got in my car. I met him. I talked to him. And we started talking very quickly. He said, what God do you know? I want to know your God. What church do you go to? Well, I go to Oakland Center for Spiritual Living. It's a cool place. I'm going to have to check this out. He said, do you know that I've been doing this for 16 years? No one has ever bothered to stop and offer me a ride. And we're talking, and we're going further up the hill than I guess I had originally intended. And eventually, at some point, he said, that's my stop. I went, great. Let him out. I said, I hope to see you again. As soon as I let him out of my car, I pulled over and I wept. Because there wasn't one cell in my body through that entire encounter that was fearful. And I knew that I had done my work. I had removed the cancer from my body that I did not place there. You see, we have habits and patterns and behaviors. I still have a lot of them. I didn't plant in there that I sort of gleaned, and I am still trying to get them out because we have to pay attention in these weeds and remove them just like we would a cancer tumor, right? Not let them grow, not let them remain inside. And it is each of our responsibilities, whatever these are, to get them out. Because with this in particular, this one, if it's unconsciously living in us, it could cost someone their life because of the color of their skin. So I would like to invite you to see what goes on inside of you, no matter what the color of your skin is. See what goes on inside of you in different neighborhoods that you're not used to when you're driving around or visiting around a lot of people with different skin color than you. If this doesn't happen very often to you, make it a point that it does. Drive in different areas of town, walk on the streets. What do you feel inside? Be conscious of it. Is it similar to the way I felt when I drove down that street and went, oh my goodness, right? Now, the good news is it may not cost someone their life, but it definitely has major impact on their life. I want to share a story, beautiful example, and a conversation with a colleague and friend. This colleague lives in a brownstone on the East Coast near the nation's capital. If you don't know what a brownstone looks like, that's what it does. So every neighbor is touching each other, living on top of each other, right? Living in a brownstone. Very progressive neighborhood, predominantly white. And this neighbor this colleague is an African-American woman, right? Now, she was sharing with me that she had lived there for 2 years, and no one said hi. Walking in and out of her brownstone, no one said hi until she got a puppy. And when she got that puppy, oh my gosh, how cute! Oh my gosh, oh, what's its name? Tell me about the puppy. Wow. Bell Hooks tells us, but love is really more of an interactive process. It's about what we do, not just what we feel. Love is a verb. It's not a noun. I have some ideas for you, especially for the parents, the grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, the nieces, the nephews, the friend. I have some ideas. Deliberately seek out children's books. This is a picture I took when we were shopping at Target one day, and it stopped me in my tracks. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Look at the children's books in Target. Deliberately seek out children's books and give them as presents to the little ones in our lives, right? We do this for Aria. She has so many favorite books, and there's so many different skin colors of books that she reads. If you live here in Dallas locally, if you don't find one, I trust you can find one wherever you live. Go to a park. I love that here in North Dallas they have, and it's called an inclusive park. It's called Cottonwood Park. Take your children and your grandchildren there. Let them play with kids from different skin tones. Ernest Holmes tells us, this was in our 365 daily reading on February 8th, the best way to make friends is to realize that we meet life in everyone. The God in us meets the God in others, proclaiming the divine presence, believing it, we shall meet it, and love, this boundless love, shall find a perfect way. So, in the next week, I invite you, every person that doesn't have the same skin color as you, I want you to say hi to them, give them that boundless love, see them for who they are, right? Make sure you're high and friendly. Give them that love, right? Don't look for anything in return, because quite frankly, you might not get much back. They might be surprised. Peter and I, when we take our walks in the park, I do this naturally. Blacks, Hispanics, Asians, Middle Easterns, it doesn't matter, people from India, and I just go, hi. Because this person is my father, my mother, my sister, my aunt, my cousin, my niece, my grandparent. They are my grandchild. They are my family. And I would do anything for family. I invite us to see through those eyes. See from that perspective. How about this? And not just in February, y'all. Really, let's celebrate it 365 days a year. Then there may not need to be a Black History Month, all right? But it's okay that there is, right? We're going to have something in just a minute that is powerful. But what are we putting out on social media? Are our Black brothers and sisters celebrating their Black brothers and sisters? How about we do? What's happening on social media? You can celebrate. Now, again, the vast majority of us did not plant these thoughts and these weeds. We can decide to root them up. And I'm going to give you one more thing here, because I know I got to go. But this is very important. And it's important to me, it's important to Peter, it's important to every single person in this community. I use a chapter in the Science of Mind textbook a lot. It's called Physical Perfection. If somebody has something going on in their body, I turn to it. And when I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2014, I turned to it and I went, oh my God, on page 234 and 235, everybody write that down, there's this section about false growths called tumors and cancer, right? We can use this for the unconscious bias that maybe has been planted in each of us. That if the thought of false growths can be erased, the manifestation can be healed. So declare, use whatever language you want, but I like this language. Every plant which my heavenly Father hath not planted shall be uprooted and sent back into the nothingness from which it came. This is how we can do this spiritual work. Everything that's not been planted, because the Heavenly Father, Spirit, Mother, Father, God has not planted this stuff in us. Humans have, right? Dissolve the ideas of false growths by knowing that there is nothing for them to feed upon. Don't feed it, right? He says, declare divine love within me, removes from my consciousness every thought unlike God or good. I use all of this. You can use this for anything you want in your life. I know that my thought does not sustain any false growth, either consciously or unconsciously originated. That's another sentence I love in that section. So be responsible. Be responsible. We can uproot this so it no longer grows past us. No longer. Eliminate them once and for all. Don't let the weeds be passed by. Make love real. Make love real. And as we do, we will have mastered the winds, the waves, the tides, and gravity, and we shall harness these energies of love. And then for the second time in the history of the world, we will have discovered fire. Let's be on fire and see love. I love you all. So it is.